Trump faces Zelensky's challenge to provide evidence for his claims. On Friday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky extended an invitation to former President Donald Trump to visit his country and demonstrate his ability to stop the war in 24 hours. The frontrunner in the Republican primary for 2024, Trump, has often stated that he could resolve the conflict between Russia and Ukraine in a single day if he were still president. After his primary victory in Iowa this week, he made a recent statement saying that he will end the conflict very quickly if elected in 2024. On July's ABC's This Week, Zelensky responded to Trump's assertions by saying, "If we are talking about ending the war at the cost of Ukraine, in other words, to make us give up our territories, well, I think, in this way, President Joe Biden could have brought it to an end even in 5 minutes, but we would not agree." Getty Images/AFP/Alexei J. Rosenfeld/Fabrice Cozy. British newscaster Matt Free asked Zelensky what he would say to Trump right now during an interview that ran on Friday on Channel 4 News. "Please accept my invitation to Kyiv, Ukraine, President Trump." According to Zelensky, "It will be enough to come if the battle can be ended in 24 hours, Newsweek emailed a Trump spokesman late Friday night to request response. After then, the Ukrainian leader acknowledged that Trump's statements regarding the war are standard campaign rhetoric. Zelensky discussed the reasons behind his belief that Trump's utterances are dangerous in response to Free's question about whether he was frightened about Trump's re-election given his actions. "He will make decisions on his own without, I am not even talking about Russia, but without both sides, without us," added Zelensky. "Allow me to speak about us now." Why? Considering how terrifying it would be if he said this in public. "Even though I've seen countless victims, it still gives me the willies." This means that even if his plan to end the conflict swiftly, a plan that no one has heard of, does not benefit our people, he would nevertheless do all it takes to see it through. Also, this is something that somewhat concerns me. In another part of his interview with Channel 4 News, Zelensky thanked his Western allies, particularly the United States, for their assistance. He did, however, express the belief that they may help us more to win. At Tuesday's World Economic Forum conference in Davos, Switzerland, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is pictured on the left, while on Wednesday, a photo of former President Donald Trump is taken at 40 Wall Street in New York City. According to Zelensky, Trump should visit Ukraine if he is confident in his ability to stop the Russian invasion within 24 hours, as the previous president has claimed. NATO is getting ready to go to war with Russia after Germany warned Putin might attack. A senior NATO official has warned that a war with Russia may break out at any moment, causing widespread disruption to Western people and military alike. Ukraine help remains uncertain despite U.S. President Joe Biden's signature of a short-term budget package that keeps the federal government working until early March. Although the bill prevents a partial government shutdown that was scheduled to begin tomorrow, it fails to address the issue of increased help for Ukraine. An attempt to reallocate additional funds. Important lawmakers are still trying to work on a border security measure that would complement increased aid for Ukraine, leaving Kyiv in a state of uncertainty. Analysis: Russians abroad face a schism in the Kremlin. Some of the remarks made by Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister, during a news conference on Thursday have caused prominent analysts to speculate. One of the points made was that the war effort had brought the Russian people closer together and solidified their national identity, but it had also helped with the cleansing of people who do not feel involved in ethnic Russian history and culture as well as Russian state history and culture, even though some of them departed Russia when the conflict broke out. Mr. Lavrov insisted that an overwhelming part of Russian society came together in an unprecedented way. Russian society is being portrayed as united around the war, according to the Institute for the Study of War think tank. This is happening despite the Kremlin's efforts to suppress opposition and give more weight to pro-war groups. The remarks, according to the experts, also show that the Kremlin is still not united on the issue of exiled individuals returning to Russia. Some Kremlin officials, including Putin, have celebrated the trend of Russians returning from abroad, whereas others have publicly threatened them. A briefing from the organization stated, when Argentina decided not to join BRICS, Moscow was disappointed. Buenos Aires formally informed BRICS that it was not going to join the organization, according to Manuel Adorni, a spokesperson for the Argentinian presidential administration, who made the announcement last December. Russian efforts to promote the idea of a multipolar world, in which the United States does not dominate international affairs, revolve around the alliance. Moscow accepted Argentina's decision, but was disappointed by it, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters. Of course, this is regrettable, but this is the sovereign right of Argentina, and we respect any decision made by Buenos Aires, stated the president. The Argentinians chose their leadership, and the leadership considered it the wrong time for them to take part in this format now, the official from the Kremlin, continuing, he asserted that there was a lengthy queue of nations eager to join BRICS. This is gratifying, and it means that many countries, on the contrary, consider the move to join BRICS to be in their national interests. According to him, Ukrainian tennis players reject handshakes from Belarusians and Russians at the Australian Open. 2 Ukrainian tennis players chose not to shake hands with their Belarusian and Russian opponents. The doing here of the Russian and Belarusian players was a mystery to another player, despite Irina Sabalenka of Belarus extending her hand to shake her. Lesia Tsurenko of Ukraine stated, "I do this for Ukraine, and I think this is the right thing." Although both Ukrainians acknowledged their opponents, Marta Kostyuk and Alina Avanesian did not shake hands. "The worst thing is that you get too used to it," said Diana Yastremska of Ukraine when speaking to reporters earlier this week about the war. "Most people are losing track of what's happening, which is a major problem. Everything is in our heads because we read about it, watch the news, and participate in it, but the words aren't hitting home like they did when the conflict first broke out. I think it's important to remember about it and do everything. Also, people are still dying every day," she remarked. "I still don't understand what all these Russian and Belarusian players are doing here." Individuals wanted in war-related cases in Russia to be imprisoned. The guy was reportedly sentenced to 19 years in jail for shooting a military enrollment officer by a Russian court in Siberia, while the woman charged with bombing a cafe, which killed a popular military blogger, is sought for a 28-year term by prosecutors in St. Petersburg. In the lead-up to the March presidential election, which Vladimir Putin is expected to easily win, Friday's events highlight the authorities' will to severely punish anyone who opposes his war in Ukraine, particularly those who resort to violence. As a result of the invasion of Ukraine, the Kremlin is trying to silence Mr. Putin's opponents by cracking down on dissent and sentencing even peaceful protesters to harsh prison terms. The state-run TASS news agency stated that 26-year-old Ruslan Zenin, a timber truck driver from the village of Ust-Ilimsk, a town 621 kilometers north of Irkutsk, was sentenced to 19 years in prison for opening fire at the military enlistment office in September 2022 in the Siberian city of Irkutsk. Mr. Putin recently authorized a partial military mobilization to augment his forces fighting in Ukraine, which sparked rare protests across Russia that were violently suppressed. The shooting occurred just days after that. Men who had never served in the military before or who had previously been exempted were called upon and compelled to do so. The men of fighting age were located by the police by combing the streets of Moscow and other towns or by raiding hostels and warehouses. The recruitment office was apparently stormed by Mr. Zenin, who proclaimed, "No one will go to fight," before allegedly opening fire, severely wounding an officer. He wished to spare his younger brother the enlistment process. According to the independent Telegram channel Solidarity Zone, Vladlen Tatarsky was a pro-war military blogger who frequently reported from the front lines in Ukraine. Daria Trapova, 26, was sentenced to 28 years in prison for the cafe blast that murdered him, according to TASS, who reported from St. Petersburg. Moments before the explosion at a cafe by the river, where Mr. Tatarsky was holding a debate, a camera showed Ms. Trapova giving him a bust of himself. This led to her detention. He was killed and 50 others were wounded in the blast. Russian media reported that she later told a judge that she had been told by 2 persons that the bust had a listening and tracking device inside, but she had no idea it was a bomb. Ukraine is expected to have significant challenges in 2024. Defense expert Simon Diggins of Sky News said that 2024 will be likely a very difficult year for the Ukrainians due to the strategic stalemate that has developed in the Ukraine war. That the Ukrainian counteroffensive has not succeeded is evident, he continued. It Rema